If heaven could write you a letter today, if God himself could fold his words into an envelope, seal it with fire, and place it directly into your hands on this exact day, this message would be what was written inside. Not general words for a general audience, not recycled phrases printed for the masses, but specific, surgical, personal words written with your name, your tears, your history, and your future in mind. Words that knew where you would be sitting when you received them. Words that understood the weight you carry to get to this moment. Heaven does not deal in coincidences, and the fact that you are here, reading and listening to this right now, is not an accident. It is an appointment. Beloved, you were built for this storm. That is the first thing written in the letter from heaven. Not that the storm will be easy. Not that the winds will stop immediately, or that the waves around your life will calm down the second you finish listening. But that you, specifically you, were built with a divine architecture inside of you that was engineered to withstand what is pressing against you right now. The God who spoke the universe into existence, who hung every star in its place, who measured the depth of every ocean and called it good, that same God designed you on purpose, with purpose, and for a purpose that is greater than your pain. You need to understand something that most people never truly grasp. Strength in the kingdom of God does not look like what the world tells you it should look like. The world tells you that strength is the absence of tears, the absence of trembling, the absence of doubt. But Jesus, the one who calmed the sea and also wept at the tomb of Lazarus, revealed a completely different picture of what it means to be strong and steadfast. He showed you that strength is continuing to move when your legs are shaking. He showed you that steadfastness is choosing to trust when everything visible tells you to give up. He showed you, through every chapter of his life, that the most unshakable people are not the ones who never suffered. They are the ones who suffered and still refused to surrender. There is a reason you have not given up yet. There is a reason that after every blow, after every loss, after every night where the ceiling felt like it was pressing down on your chest and sleep refused to come, you are still here. That is not your willpower alone. That is the fingerprint of God on your life. That is the evidence that before you were formed in your mother's womb, he knew you and he placed inside of you a resilience that is not natural in origin. It is supernatural. It was deposited before you even had a name. Think about what you have already survived. Think about the seasons that felt terminal, the relationships that shattered, the dreams that seemed to dissolve in your hands just when you thought you were close enough to touch them. Think about the moments where you told yourself you could not take one more step, and yet somehow, by a grace you still cannot fully explain, you took the step anyway. That was not luck. That was not merely human determination. That was Jesus working through you even when you did not have the language to recognize it. In the book of Isaiah, chapter 40, verse 31, God makes a declaration that is not a suggestion and not a maybe. He says that those who wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not grow weary. They shall walk and not faint. He did not say those who have it all together. He did not say those who have never failed or fallen. He said those who wait, those who remain in relationship with him through the waiting. Those are the ones who receive strength that cannot be manufactured by any human effort. You are one of those people. You may not feel like it today. You may be sitting in the middle of a season that feels like the opposite of strength. You may feel fragile, cracked, unsure of what the next month will bring. But hear this clearly. The letter from heaven says that God is not done writing your story, and the chapter you are in right now is not the final chapter. The storm you are navigating is not your destination. It is your development. This is not coincidence. This is divine intervention. The fact that heaven pressed pause on everything else to bring this word directly to you today is itself a sign that your story matters to God. You were never meant to walk through this life wondering if you were seen. You are seen. You are known. You are chosen not because you are perfect, but because God's grace is perfect, and He chose to pour it into a vessel that is willing, that is hungry, that is still standing even when standing hurts. Comment the number 777 right now if you receive this word. Let it be your declaration that you believe God is not finished with you. Let it be your agreement with heaven that the strength inside of you is real, that it is divine in origin, and that no force on this earth has the authority to extinguish what God Himself placed inside of you. You were built for this storm, and the secret of how to stand unshaken in the middle of it is about to be revealed to you. You are still here. You did not walk away after the first word landed, and that matters more than you know. Because what God begins, He always intends to complete, and the fact that something in your spirit pulled you forward into this next part of the message is not a small thing. It is evidence that the roots being discussed in the last section are already reaching downward in you, already searching for something solid to hold on to beneath the surface of everything you can see and feel and measure. So let us go deeper now, because the letter from heaven did not stop at the envelope. It continued, and what it says next is perhaps the most important thing that most followers of Jesus spend their entire lives reading past, without stopping to truly receive. The root system that Jesus planted is not made of discipline alone. It is not constructed from early morning routines, or longer prayer lists, or more church attendance. Those things have their place, and they are valuable, but they are not the foundation. The foundation, the actual root system that Jesus revealed as the secret to genuine strength and true steadfastness in life, is something far more intimate, far more personal, and far more available to you right now than any program or practice could ever offer. In the book of John, chapter 15, verse 5, Jesus says something extraordinary. He says, "I am the vine, you are the branches. Whoever abides in me and I in him, he it is that bears much fruit. For apart from me you can do nothing." Read those words again, and let them settle past your intellect and into the deeper place where real transformation happens. Apart from me, you can do nothing, not less, not a reduced version of what you are capable of. Nothing. Jesus did not soften that statement. He did not give it exceptions or qualifying footnotes. He drew the sharpest possible line between a life rooted in abiding and a life built on striving, and He placed the full weight of fruitfulness on one side of that line only. And here is what most people miss when they read that verse. They hear it as a warning, as a reminder of their inadequacy, their dependence, their smallness. But Jesus did not say those words to diminish you. He said them to liberate you. Because if fruitfulness flows from abiding, then the question of whether you are strong enough, capable enough, anointed enough, gifted enough, is no longer the right question. The only question that matters is whether you are remaining, whether you are staying connected, whether your roots are going down into Him, into His Word, into His presence, into the living relationship that is the source of everything that will ever grow in your life that actually lasts. The world around you is obsessed with the visible fruit, the results, the outcomes, the numbers, the metrics of success and impact and influence. And there is nothing wrong with desiring fruit. Jesus Himself said in John chapter 15, verse 8, that it is by bearing much fruit that you glorify the Father. Fruit matters to God. But Jesus understood something profound about the order of things. Fruit is never the starting point. Fruit is always the overflow. It is what happens naturally, supernaturally, inevitably, when a branch refuses to disconnect itself from the vine. Think about a tree in winter. When the leaves have fallen and the branches are bare and everything visible suggests that the tree is dormant, possibly even dead, something extraordinary is happening beneath the surface where no one can see it. The roots are working. The roots are reaching. The roots are going deeper into the soil, finding water in places that the drought of the season has not yet touched, drawing up nutrients that the bare branches above would never be able to access on their own. And when spring arrives and the warmth returns and the conditions finally align, that tree does not have to strive to produce leaves. It does not have to perform or force or manufacture new growth. The growth simply comes because the roots have been faithfully doing their invisible work all through the cold and the bare and the seemingly unproductive season. That is the picture Jesus is painting for your life right now. The season you have been walking through, the one that felt unproductive, the one where you looked around and could not see evidence of growth or movement or answered prayer. That season was not wasted. Your roots were working. God was developing in you, beneath the surface where the world cannot see and the enemy cannot measure, exactly the depth of root system that your next season of fruitfulness will require. And here is the practical secret of how that root system is built. The secret that Jesus modeled every single day of his earthly ministry. He withdrew. He separated. He went to the mountain alone before the sunrise while the disciples were still sleeping. He found the garden. He found the quiet place. He found the moment of just him and the Father before the crowd, before the demands, before the next miraculous need presented itself. And in that hidden place, in that intentional, unhurried, unperformed presence with God, he received everything he needed to carry, everything he was called to carry. You have been told that the most productive hours are the ones that are most visible. The most valuable moments are the ones that generate the most output. But Jesus operated by a completely different economy. For him, the hidden hours were the power hours. The silent moments with the Father were the moments where the supernatural strength that carried him through every confrontation, every healing, every teaching, every betrayal was renewed and replenished. And he is not offering you a system to copy. He is offering you an invitation to enter, to come into the same quality of connection with the Father that he demonstrated, to let your roots go down into that living water and refuse to be pulled back up by the anxiety and the urgency and the noise that this world uses to keep you disconnected from the very source of your strength. Beloved, steadfastness is not a personality trait. It is not something you either have or do not have by the accident of your temperament or your upbringing. Steadfastness is a fruit of abiding. It is what grows in a life that has made the decision, day after day, in the easy seasons and the crushing seasons, to stay connected to Jesus, to keep the roots going down, to choose the vine over the striving. And every person who has ever stood unshakable in the middle of circumstances that should have broken them, every man and woman throughout the centuries of the church who looked into the face of opposition and persecution and loss and still held their peace, they were not operating on their own spiritual reserves. They were drawing from a root system that went so deep into God that the storms above the surface could shake the branches, but could never uproot the tree. That is what is available to you. Not someday. Not after you have fixed everything that feels broken in your life or resolved every doubt that lives in the back of your mind. Now, today, in this exact condition, in this exact season, The vine does not wait for the branch to be impressive, for it sends the sap flowing. The connection is the qualification. The abiding is the anointing. Before we go further into this message, we want to pause and say something from a place of genuine sincerity. If this message is reaching something real inside of you, if these words are landing in a place that needed to be touched today, then we are grateful, truly grateful. Not just that you clicked or that you are watching, but that you chose to give your time and your attention to something that we believe God is using to speak directly into your life. If this channel and this ministry have brought value into your world and you feel led to help us continue this work, we have placed a support link in the description below. Everything is completely voluntary. There is no pressure and no obligation attached to it. We understand that every person is in a different season, and generosity comes in many forms. But if you are in a position to give and you feel moved to do so, every contribution, no matter how small it may seem to you, goes directly into sustaining this ministry and allowing these messages to reach the next person who needs to hear exactly what you heard today. And whether you are able to give or not, please know that we are genuinely thankful you are here, that you listened, that you stayed. That matters to us more than any number ever could. If this message is speaking to you, take a moment right now and share it with one person, just one. Someone who came to your mind while you were listening. Someone who is walking through a storm right now and needs to be reminded that their roots are working even when they cannot see the growth. Like this video as an act of agreement with what God is doing in your life through it. And if you are not yet subscribed to this channel, subscribe now, because this is only the beginning of what God is preparing to speak through this space into your life. Type the words "I am rooted" in the comments right now. Let it be your declaration that you are choosing the vine over the striving, the abiding over the performing, the roots over the results. Because the deeper your roots go into Him, the more unshakable everything above the surface becomes. There is a moment in the life of every chosen one where the pressure becomes so specific, so precisely targeted, so relentlessly personal, that it stops feeling like a general hardship and starts feeling like something that knows your name. You know that moment. You have lived inside of it. Perhaps you are living inside of it right now. The kind of pressure that does not feel random or accidental, but surgical, as though something unseen has identified exactly where you are most vulnerable and has decided to press there without stopping, without relenting, without giving you room to fully catch your breath before the next wave arrives. And in those moments, the question that rises up from the deepest part of you is not a theological question. It is not an academic one. It is raw and it is honest, and it sounds something like this. Why? Why is this happening to me? Why, if I am truly chosen, if I am truly loved, if God truly has a plan for my life, does it feel like that plan includes more crushing than celebrating, more refining than resting, more fire than comfort? Why does the path of the chosen one so consistently run directly through the territory of suffering rather than around it? That question deserves a real answer, not a dismissal. Not a spiritual platitude wrapped in religious language that sounds beautiful but leaves you exactly where you started. A real answer. And Jesus gave one, not in an abstract theological lecture, but in the lived reality of His own experience, in the specific language He chose when He spoke to His followers about what the road ahead would look like for those who chose to follow Him all the way. In the book of John, chapter 16, verse 33, Jesus says something that most people in comfortable Christianity would prefer not to linger on too long. He says, "In this world you will have trouble, not you might." Not there is a small possibility, depending on your circumstances, that Some level of difficulty may come your way. You will have trouble. He said it as a certainty, as a fact of the terrain that everyone who walks with him must be prepared to navigate. But then, he does not leave you there in the middle of that uncomfortable truth. He follows it immediately with the most powerful second half of a sentence in the entire gospel. He says, "But take heart. I have overcome the world." 2 sentences. The first one honest enough to acknowledge that pressure is real, that trouble is coming, that no amount of faith will create a life entirely free from resistance. The second one, powerful enough to reframe everything the first one said. Because the one who is telling you that trouble is coming is the same one who has already defeated every form of trouble at its root. He is not warning you from a distance. He is walking with you through it, and he has already been to the other side of every storm you will ever and returned victorious. But here is the deeper secret that Jesus was revealing in that moment, the one that goes beneath the surface of simple comfort and into the transformative truth of how pressure actually functions in the economy of God. Pressure is not punishment. Pressure is promotion, and not in the shallow, motivational sense of that phrase, but in a deeply spiritual, geologically precise sense that changes everything about how you interpret what you are experiencing right now. Consider the diamond. You know the science of it. A diamond begins as carbon, the most ordinary, unremarkable element imaginable. There is nothing in its original form that suggests what it will become. But when that carbon is subjected to the right combination of extreme heat and extreme pressure, something that would take millions of years naturally, it undergoes a transformation at the molecular level that changes its entire structure. It does not just become shinier carbon. It becomes something categorically different. Something harder than almost anything else on Earth. Something capable of cutting through materials that would destroy the original form. Something that refracts light in a way that the original carbon could never have done. God is not wasting the pressure on you. He is not allowing the heat of your current season to touch you because he has forgotten about you, or because your faith is insufficient, or because you somehow fell outside the boundary of his protection. He is allowing it because he can see what you are becoming and what you are. Becoming requires a process that comfort alone could never produce. The things being formed in you right now, the depth of compassion, the quality of wisdom, the unshakable peace that does not depend on favorable circumstances, the kind of faith that does not require visible evidence to remain standing. None of those things grow in the absence of resistance. They are the products of pressure, and God is the master craftsman who knows exactly how much, applied for exactly how long, will produce exactly the quality of character that your destiny requires. Think about the life of Joseph in the book of Genesis. Here was a young man who received a dream from God, a genuine, heaven-sent vision of his future that was specific and glorious and real. And then immediately, almost without pause, his life went in the exact opposite direction of that dream. His brothers, the very people who should have celebrated with him, threw him into a pit. He was sold into slavery in a foreign land. He served faithfully in Potiphar's house and was falsely accused. He was thrown into prison for something he did not do. He sat in that prison for years with no visible movement toward the fulfillment of what God had shown him. If you had watched his life from the outside during those years, you would have seen nothing that looked like a chosen one on the way to greatness. You would have seen a young man buried under layers of injustice, betrayal, displacement, and forgotten promises. But what God was doing during every one of those years was not postponing Joseph's destiny. He was manufacturing the character, the wisdom, the administrative brilliance, the emotional maturity, and the spiritual depth that a young boy who had only ever known his father's favor could never have carried. The prison was not a detour, it was a classroom. The pit was not an ending, it was preparation. And when the moment of promotion finally came, when Pharaoh pulled him out of obscurity and placed him in a position of authority over an entire nation, Joseph was not just ready in terms of talent. He was ready in terms of character. And character is always the product of pressure faithfully endured. You are in a classroom right now. The subject matter is difficult. The tests are not multiple choice and they do not come with a study guide. But the teacher is the most qualified instructor in the universe, and he does not administer tests that his students are not equipped to pass. He does not allow pressure that has no redemptive purpose. He does not permit fire that is not simultaneously refining something precious. And he never, not once, not in any chapter of your story, takes his eyes off what he is forming in you. There is something else that Jesus revealed about pressure that is crucial for you to understand. And it is found in the parable of the sower in the book of Matthew, chapter 13. When Jesus described the seed that fell on rocky ground, he said it sprang up quickly but had no root, and when trouble and persecution came, it immediately fell away. Notice what Jesus identified as the agent that revealed the shallowness of the root. It was not the absence of blessing. It was not the lack of initial growth. It was the pressure, the trouble, the persecution. It was the very thing that most people are praying to avoid that Jesus identified as the revealer of root depth. This means that the pressure you are experiencing right now is not proving that you are failing. It is revealing how deep your roots actually go. And every moment that you choose to stay connected to Jesus in the middle of that pressure, every moment you choose hope over despair, trust over panic, prayer over paralysis, you are not just surviving the test, you are passing it. You are demonstrating a root system that goes down into God so deeply that what is above the surface can shake without breaking. The enemy studies your life with the specific intention of finding the leverage point, the place where the right amount of pressure applied in the right direction might cause you to disconnect from the vine. He is not creative. He is methodical. He identifies what you love most and threatens it. He identifies where you feel most uncertain and amplifies it. He identifies the dream God placed in your heart and uses delay to make it feel like denial. He is not random. He is strategic. But here is what the enemy never accounts for, and it is the revelation that changes everything about how you walk through pressure from this day forward. When God is the architect of your life, even the tools of the enemy become instruments of your promotion. Even the pit becomes a path. Even the prison becomes preparation. Even the pressure that was designed to break you becomes the very process that makes you unbreakable. You are not being crushed. You are being compressed. And everything that God has been allowing to press against you is in the process of producing in you something so rare, so valuable, so reflective of His light, that when the season of pressure lifts and the world finally sees what has been formed in the hidden place, not even your enemies will be able to deny that the hand of God was on your life the entire time. The storm was never the story. You are the story, and God is still writing. You survived the pit. You survived the prison. You survived the seasons that were designed to silence you permanently. And now, standing on the other side of everything that tried to bury you, there is a truth that heaven needs you to receive, not just intellectually, but in the marrow of your bones, in the place where your deepest convictions live. The resistance you have been facing, the specific, relentless, surgically targeted opposition that has followed you through every season of growth and every attempt to move forward in what God has called you to do. That resistance is not evidence that you are off track. It is the most compelling evidence possible that you are directly on it. The enemy does not waste his energy on people who pose no threat to his agenda. He does not deploy his most sophisticated strategies against lives that are heading nowhere significant. Hell does not organize itself against the ordinary. It reserves its most focused, most persistent, most creative opposition for the ones who carry something that, if allowed to fully develop and be released into the world, will dismantle darkness in ways that cannot be easily recovered from. And if you have been under a level of attack that seems disproportionate to where you currently are in life, if the opposition feels bigger than your visible platform, or your current influence would seem to justify, then you need to understand something critical. The enemy is not responding to who you are today. He is responding to who God has already declared you will become. In the book of Luke, chapter 4, the moment Jesus stepped fully into his public ministry and his identity as the Son of God was declared openly at his baptism, the very next thing that happened was not a celebration. It was not an immediate release into the miraculous. It was a wilderness. The Spirit led him into the desert for 40 days, where he was tempted by the enemy in the most vulnerable, most personal, most precisely targeted ways imaginable. And what is extraordinary about that sequence is the timing of it. It did not come before the declaration of his identity. It came after. The moment heaven said, "This is my beloved Son in whom I am well pleased," the enemy arrived with everything he had. That pattern is not unique to Jesus. It is the pattern of every life that heaven has marked for significant purpose. The moment a new level of calling is activated, the moment God speaks a new word over your life, or opens a door that was previously closed, or deposits a dream that feels larger than your current capacity, the enemy takes notice. And he responds not by ignoring you, but by intensifying the pressure in direct proportion to the threat he perceives you to be. So think carefully about the timing of the attacks you have experienced in your own life. Think about when the most significant opposition arrived. Was it not often immediately after a breakthrough, immediately after a moment of clarity about your purpose, immediately after a prayer that felt genuinely answered, immediately after you made a decision to move deeper into what God was calling you toward? That timing is not coincidental. It is evidence that something in the spirit realm recognized what was happening in your life and decided that it needed to be stopped before it could fully develop. But here is the revelation that the enemy desperately does not want you to walk in. He cannot stop what God has ordained. He can delay. He can distract. He can create confusion and discouragement and weariness. He can use the people closest to you as instruments of opposition without them even realizing it. He can use circumstances and systems and setbacks to make the road longer and harder than it needed to be. But he cannot cancel the assignment that God placed on your life before the foundation of the world. He does not have that authority. He never did. And every weapon that has been formed against you, everyone that has been lifted and aimed and released in your direction, has already been addressed by a promise in Isaiah chapter 54, verse 17, that says, "No weapon formed against you shall prosper. Not might not prosper. Not will probably not prosper under the right conditions. Shall not prosper." It is a covenant word. It is a divine guarantee that carries the full weight of the character and faithfulness of God behind it. And the God who made that promise is not a God who speaks carelessly or makes commitments he does not intend to keep. When he says shall not, He means it across every dimension of reality, in the seen world and the unseen world, in the natural realm and the spiritual realm, in the present moment, and in every future season that your life will ever enter. You need to hear this clearly today, because the enemy has been working very hard to make you feel like you are losing. He has been orchestrating circumstances and conversations and internal narratives designed to convince you that the opposition is winning, that the delays are permanent, that the doors that closed will never open again, that the dreams that have not yet manifested are evidence that they were never real to begin with. And he has been particularly aggressive in this season because he can see something that you may not yet be able to see from where you are standing. He can see that you are closer than you have ever been. He can see that the roots have gone deep enough. He can see that the character being formed in the pressure is almost complete. And he knows that when a chosen one who has been through the fire comes out on the other side, they do not come out ordinary. They come out with authority and a testimony and a fire in their eyes that is absolutely impossible to manufacture by any means other than the one they walked through. The very thing that the enemy sent to destroy your faith has been the thing that deepened it beyond what comfortable seasons could have ever produced. The very betrayal that was designed to isolate you has been the thing that drove you into a quality of intimacy with God that crowded rooms and easy relationships never could have cultivated. The very financial pressure that was meant to make you desperate has been developing in you a dependence on God that no amount of abundance could have taught. Every weapon has been turned. Every attack has been repurposed. Every plan of the enemy has been redirected by a God whose wisdom is so vastly superior to the schemes of darkness that he was already using the opposition as a tool of promotion before the enemy even finished launching it. This is the moment we want to pause and speak to you from our hearts, not as a channel, not as a ministry, but as fellow travelers on this road who understand what it costs to keep going when everything around you is pressing inward. We know that many of you listening to this message right now are in the middle of something genuinely hard. Not theoretical hardship, but real, daily, waking up in the morning and feeling the weight of it kind of hard. And we want you to know that this ministry exists because of people like you, because of the ones who are still reaching for God in the middle of the most difficult seasons of their lives. Every message we create, every word we pray over before it is spoken, is for you specifically. If this channel has been a place where you have found strength, encouragement, or a word that arrived exactly when you needed it, and if you feel in your heart a desire to help us continue this work and reach more people who are walking through their own storms right now, we have placed a support link in the description below this video. Every contribution, whatever you are able to give, goes directly into sustaining this ministry and ensuring that these messages can continue to reach the next person who needs to hear exactly what you are hearing today. This is entirely voluntary. There is no pressure attached to it and no obligation. We understand that every person is in a different season of life and a different season of resources. But if you are led to give, please know that what you are doing is not just supporting a channel. You are becoming part of the reason that someone sitting in their own darkness right now finds a light that changes the direction of their life. And whether you give or whether you do not, we want you to hear this clearly and sincerely. We are grateful you are here. We are grateful you stayed through this part of the message. We are grateful that you are still fighting, still believing, still reaching. That matters to us genuinely and deeply. You are not just a viewer to this ministry. You are the reason this ministry exists. Now come back to what heaven needs you to carry forward from this section. The enemy knows what you carry. He has always known. That is why he fought so hard to stop you before you could fully step into it. But what he did not account for is that the God who placed the calling on your life is the same God who has been guarding it through every season of opposition. Your assignment has not been canceled. Your purpose has not been revoked. Your future has not been surrendered to the schemes of darkness. The enemy is terrified of what you are becoming, and he should be, because what God is building in you through the fire of everything you have endured is not just stronger than what you were before. It is unbreakable in a way that only the fire could have produced. You are still standing, and that alone is the most powerful testimony you carry. There is a mountain in the ancient world that changed everything, not because of its height or its geography or its place on any map that soldiers or merchants would have carried, but because of what was spoken on it. Because of who climbed it and sat down and opened their mouth and began to release words that did not sound like anything the people gathered around had ever heard before. Words that turned the entire value system of the world upside down. Words that redefined power and blessing and greatness in ways that scandalized the religious establishment and confused the intellectuals and made the poor and the broken and the mourning feel, perhaps for the first time in their lives, like they were standing at the center of something rather than at the edges of everything. The Sermon on the Mount. You have heard it referenced countless times. You may have read it in church, studied it in a devotional, heard it quoted in sermons about kindness and generosity and turning the other cheek. But there is a dimension of what Jesus was doing in Matthew chapters 5 through 7 that goes far beyond moral instruction or ethical guidelines for a better society. There is a secret encoded inside the Beatitudes, specifically inside those opening declarations that begin with the word blessed, that most people read as poetry, but that Jesus intended as a blueprint, a precise, revolutionary, heaven-authored blueprint for how a human being becomes genuinely unshakable in the middle of a world that is constantly shifting beneath their feet. Begin at the beginning. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. This is the first declaration, and it is the foundation of everything that follows. And it is also the one that most people in modern Christianity find the most uncomfortable, because the world, and honestly, much of contemporary Christian culture as well, has trained you to celebrate spiritual confidence, spiritual abundance, spiritual certainty, to perform strength, to project fullness, to speak victory even when what you are feeling on the inside is something much closer to emptiness than overflow. But Jesus begins here, with the poor in spirit, with the ones who have come to the end of their own spiritual self-sufficiency, with the ones who have stopped pretending that they have it all together in the presence of God and have instead arrived at the place of genuine, humble, unperformed dependency. And to those people specifically, to the ones who the world would look at and see weakness, Jesus makes the most staggering announcement imaginable. Theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Not will be, not might be if they perform well enough or believe hard enough or recover fast enough. Is present tense, immediate, unconditional. The kingdom belongs to them now. What Jesus was revealing in that single declaration is the entire logic of how God's strength operates in a human life. Divine strength does not flow into vessels that are already full of themselves. It does not reinforce the confidence of the self-reliant or add to the power of those who have decided they do not really need it. It rushes, it pours, it floods into the ones who have emptied themselves of their own agenda, their own strategies, their own attempts to manage and control. and hold together the things that only God can truly hold. Poverty of spirit is not spiritual failure. It is the precise posture that makes supernatural strength possible. Meve to the me. Second declaration. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Here again, Jesus takes something that the world categorizes as weakness, as vulnerability, as a condition to be overcome as quickly as possible, and he places it inside a framework of divine blessing. The mourning ones, the ones sitting with grief, with loss, with the specific kind of sorrow that comes from loving something deeply and watching it be taken away or broken, but what you knew how to repair. The ones who feel things so completely and so honestly that the feeling itself becomes a weight they carry visibly, and Jesus says they are blessed, not despite the mourning, not on the other side of the mourning when they have finally processed it and moved forward. In the mourning, and the promise he attaches to it, they shall be comforted, is not a vague spiritual sentiment about feeling better eventually. It is a specific, covenantal promise from the God who calls himself the Father of mercies and the God of all comfort in 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 3. The comfort that flows into a life that has allowed itself to genuinely mourn is a comfort that the world has no equivalent for. It is not the comfort of distraction or entertainment or numbing. It is the comfort of presence, the specific, tangible, supernatural nearness of God that only seems to manifest in its fullest form in the spaces that grief has created. You may be in one of those spaces right now. You may be mourning something that you have not even fully named yet, a loss that does not have clean edges, a grief that does not fit into the categories that other people find acceptable, and the Beatitude speaks directly to where you are. The comfort is coming, not as a reward for recovering faster, but as the natural response of a God who cannot see genuine mourning without moving toward it. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. This is perhaps the most countercultural statement in all of Scripture when placed against the backdrop of a world that worships aggression, dominance, self-promotion, and the relentless pursuit of power through force. The meek, not the passive, not the defeated, not the ones who have simply given up on having any influence or impact on the world around them. The Greek word for meek that Matthew uses carries within it the image of a powerful horse that has been trained, that has submitted its enormous strength to the guidance of its rider. Meekness is not the absence of power. It is power that has been submitted to a higher authority. It is strength that has been placed under divine governance rather than self-governance. And the promise attached to it is staggering in its scope. They shall inherit the earth, not a small plot, not a comfortable corner of influence, the earth. The ones who have submitted their strength to God, who have stopped trying to seize what they want through force and manipulation and self-promotion, and have instead placed their gifts and their capacity and their ambition under the lordship of Jesus. Those are the ones to whom God gives the broadest, most lasting, most genuinely significant inheritance. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be filled. Think about the specificity of those two words, hunger and thirst. Jesus did not say those who are mildly interested in righteousness, or those who attend services that discuss righteousness, or those who appreciate righteousness in theory. He used the language of biological desperation. Hunger and thirst are not preferences, they are drives. They are the body's way of communicating that something essential is absent and that nothing else will satisfy until that specific thing is received. And Jesus says that the ones who approach righteousness, who approach the things of God, who approach the pursuit of holiness and justice and alignment with heaven, with that quality of desperation and that intensity of longing they shall be filled, not partially, not temporarily, filled. The word in the original language carries the image of being satisfied completely, the way a person who has been genuinely hungry is satisfied after a full meal. The kind of satisfaction where nothing more is needed because what was given was exactly what the longing required. These first 4 declarations of the Beatitudes form a sequence that is not accidental. Poverty of spirit creates the posture. Mourning creates the space. Meekness provides the submission. Hunger and thirst generate the pursuit. And what Jesus was encoding in this sequence is the internal architecture of a soul that is capable of receiving and sustaining the kind of divine strength that does not depend on external circumstances to remain steady. A soul that has been emptied of self-reliance, that has allowed itself to feel honestly, that has submitted its strength to divine authority, that is desperately hungry for more of God, rather than more of comfort. That soul has a root system that can hold anything God places in its branches without breaking. This is the blueprint that most people read past. The Beatitudes are not a list of spiritual personality types that some people happen to have and others do not. They are a progression, a pathway, a divine invitation into the kind of internal transformation that produces external unshakability. Jesus was not describing different categories of blessed people. He was describing the stages of a single journey. The journey from self-sufficiency to God-sufficiency, from performing strength to receiving it, from striving for the life you want to inheriting the life God designed. You are on that journey, and every part of it, including the parts that felt like loss, is moving you in exactly the right direction. You have been moving through something in this message that is bigger than information. You may have felt it in the earlier sections, that quiet shift happening beneath the surface of your thinking, the way certain words landed not just in your mind but somewhere deeper, somewhere that does not have a precise anatomical name, but that you recognize as the place where real change actually begins. That shift is not the product of clever writing or emotional manipulation. That is the movement of the Holy Spirit inside a life that has made itself available to receive something it genuinely needed. And what you are about to receive in this section is perhaps the most misunderstood secret that Jesus modeled during his entire earthly ministry. The world you live in has declared war on stillness. Not openly, not with an announced agenda, but systematically and relentlessly. From the moment you open your eyes in the morning to the moment you close them at night, there is a continuous, coordinated, algorithmically optimized assault on your capacity to be quiet. Notifications demand your attention before you have fully woken up. News cycles generate a perpetual low-grade anxiety that keeps your nervous system in a constant state of readiness for threat. Social media presents you with an endless stream of other people's highlight reels that quietly suggest your life is moving too slowly and your progress is insufficient. And underneath all of it, woven through every layer of modern life, is a message that runs deeper and more damaging than any single distraction. The message that says your value is measured by your output, your worth is determined by your productivity, and silence is something you have to earn by finishing everything first. Jesus refused that message entirely. Not in theory, not as a philosophical position he articulated in a lecture, but in the daily, practical, observable rhythm of his life. The Gospel of Mark alone references him withdrawing to quiet places so frequently and so consistently that it becomes impossible to read it as incidental detail. It is structural. It is the backbone of how he operated. Mark chapter 1, verse 35 tells us that very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and went off to a solitary place where he prayed. This was after a full day of ministry, after healing many people, after the crowd had pressed against him with their needs and their questions and their desperation. And his response to the fullness of that kind of giving was not to push through on willpower or to simply begin the next day with the momentum of the previous one. It was to withdraw, to find the quiet, to go back to the source. This is not a personality preference. This is not a spiritual discipline reserved for introverts or contemplatives, or those with the luxury of unscheduled mornings. This is the war strategy of the Son of God, because Jesus understood something about the nature of spiritual strength that most of the modern church has largely forgotten in its rush to be relevant and productive and constantly visible. He understood that what flows out of you in public is entirely dependent on what has been deposited in you in private. He understood that the miraculous, the authoritative, the genuinely transformative ministry that left people changed rather than merely impressed, that did not come from talent or training or the accumulated confidence of previous successes. It came from the Father, and the Father deposited it in the quiet. When Jesus stood before Lazarus's tomb and commanded a dead man to come out, he was not operating on the spiritual energy of a spontaneous moment. He was drawing from a reservoir that had been filled through countless early mornings and solitary evenings, and unhurried conversations with the Father that no gospel writer was present to record. When he spoke to the storm on the Sea of Galilee, and the wind and waves obeyed his voice, that authority was not manufactured in the moment of crisis. It was the overflow of a life so deeply rooted in communion with God that even the forces of nature recognized the sound of that communion when they heard it. And here is the personal, specific word that this section of the letter from heaven needs to deliver directly to you. The reason you have been feeling depleted is not because you are spiritually inadequate. It is not because your faith is too small or your prayer life is too inconsistent or your worship is not enthusiastic enough. The reason you have been running on empty is because the world has convinced you that slowing down is falling behind, and you have believed it long enough that the discipline of stillness has been gradually crowded out of your life by things that feel more urgent, but are, in reality, far less important. Jesus is not asking you to add one more spiritual practice to an already overwhelming schedule. He is inviting you to recover something that was always meant to be the center of everything else. Still place. The quiet before the noise begins. The moment where you sit with the Father not to produce anything or prove anything or present anything, but simply to receive. To let the reservoir be filled, to allow the roots to draw from the source before the demands of the day begin pulling from the branches. There is a phrase in Psalm 46, verse 10, that most people quote casually, without recognizing the revolutionary weight of what it actually says. Be still and know that I am God. In the original Hebrew, the word translated as be still carries a meaning that is far more active than simple physical quietness. It means to let go, to release the grip, to stop straining and forcing and holding together by your own effort what only God was ever designed to sustain. It is a command addressed not primarily to your body, but to your soul, to the part of you that has been white-knuckling its way through this season, trying to hold everything in place, trying to figure out the solution before the problem gets worse, trying to anticipate every possible threat so that nothing catches you unprepared. Let go, be still, and in that stillness, know. The knowing that comes in stillness is not intellectual information. It is relational revelation. It is the kind of knowing that only comes from proximity, from sitting long enough in the presence of God, that the awareness of who He is begins to Recalibrate your awareness of who you are and what is actually happening in your life. In His stillness, you discover that the thing you were afraid of is already in His hands. That the problem you were trying to solve was never yours to solve alone. That the silence you were running from was not absence but invitation. Beloved, this is the war strategy that the enemy does not want you to recover. He can handle a busy Christian. He can work around a noisy believer. What he cannot counter is a soul that has learned to be still. Because a soul that is still long enough to hear the voice of God is a soul that is being directed by an intelligence and a wisdom that is infinitely superior to anything the enemy can deploy against it. Before we move forward, we want to take a brief moment to speak to you from a place of genuine love and gratitude. This ministry, these messages, this space where we come together to receive what God is speaking over the lives of His chosen ones, it exists because of people who believe that words like these matter. If you have been finding strength and renewal in this message today, and if something in you feels moved to help this work continue and expand, to reach more people who are sitting in their own storms right now, the support link is available in the description below. Everything is entirely voluntary and comes with absolutely no pressure or expectation attached. But if you are in a position to give and you feel genuinely led to do so, please know that what you are doing is planting a seed that will produce fruit in lives you may never meet on this side of eternity. If this message has touched something real in you today, share it with one person who needs to hear it. Like this video as a simple act of agreement with what God is doing through it. And if you are not yet part of this community, subscribe now so that the next message finds you before the next storm does. Because the stillness Jesus is inviting you into is not the end of your strength. It is the beginning of a strength so deep and so sourced in God that nothing the world throws at you will ever be able to move you from the place where He has planted you. There is a word that heaven has been holding over your life in every season where you were certain that everything was ending. A word that was spoken before the pain arrived, before the loss took shape, before the door closed or the relationship fractured or the diagnosis came or the dream went silent. A word that did not change when your circumstances changed, that did not diminish when your faith was at its lowest, that did not expire when the waiting stretched past what felt humanly reasonable. That word is covenant, and it is the most powerful, most stabilizing, most hope-generating word in the entire vocabulary of God. Most people understand covenant casually. They hear it and think of promises, of agreements, of commitments made between two parties with the expectation of mutual faithfulness. And while that is not wrong, it is profoundly incomplete. Because in the biblical understanding of covenant, particularly in the ancient Near Eastern world in which the scriptures were written, a covenant was not merely a contractual agreement that two equal parties entered into and could exit if conditions changed. A covenant was a binding, blood-sealed, unilateral commitment that the stronger party made to the weaker one. A commitment so serious, so permanent, so woven into the very identity of the one who made it, that to break it would be to unmake yourself. When God makes a covenant, He is not signing a contract that His lawyers reviewed and His circumstances might later cause Him to renegotiate. He is binding Himself by the weight of His own eternal character to a commitment that He intends to fulfill, regardless of how many times you fail, regardless of how many seasons of unfaithfulness mark the path of your journey toward what He promised. In Hebrews chapter 6, verses 17 and 18, the writer tells us that God confirmed His promise with an oath, so that by two unchangeable things, in which it is impossible for God to lie, We who have fled for refuge might have strong encouragement to hold fast to the hope set before us. Two unchangeable things, His word and His oath. Not one safety net, but two, stacked on top of each other, woven together into a foundation so secure that the writer says it is impossible for it to fail. That foundation is under your life right now. Not under the version of your life that you imagined it would be by this point. Not under the cleaned up, together, finally figured it out version of yourself that you keep thinking God is waiting for before He fully shows up. Under the actual life you are living. Under the real you with the real history and the real wounds and the real questions that you have never said out loud to anyone. The covenant covers all of it. It was never conditioned on your performance. It was always conditioned on His character, and His character does not change. Now bring that truth into contact with the specific broken seasons of your life, the ones that felt like permanent endings, the ones where something you had built or believed in or loved deeply was taken away or shattered beyond what you knew how to repair, the ones where you looked at the wreckage around you and could not see how anything good could ever be constructed from what remained. Because here is what the covenant of restoration means in the language of your actual lived experience. It means that God does not look at the broken pieces of your story and see sees material. He sees the raw components of something that, under His hands, will be more beautiful and more sturdy and more genuinely useful than the original version was ever capable of being. The prophet Joel, in chapter 2, verse 25, carries one of the most stunning restoration promises in all of Scripture. God says, "I will restore to you the years that the swarming locust has eaten." Think about the specificity of that promise. Not, "I will give you new years to replace the ones that were lost." Not, "I will make the future so good that you forget about the past." I will restore the years themselves, the actual time, the actual seasons, the actual experiences and relationships, and opportunities that felt like they were consumed beyond recovery. God is announcing His intention to reach back into the timeline of your life and do something that defies the logic of linear time, to bring restoration so complete that the years of loss are not simply compensated for, but are actually reclaimed and repurposed and woven back into your story in a way that produces something more than you originally had. That is not the language of a God who is doing His best to make the most of a bad situation. That is the language of a God who has never lost control of a single chapter of your story, not even the ones that felt most chaotic and most beyond repair. The locust years, the years that felt devoured, were never outside His awareness or beyond His authority. He permitted the process. He sustained you through it. And now He is announcing restoration, not as a distant possibility, but as a covenant. Promise backed by the same unchangeable character that spoke the universe into existence. Consider what restoration looks like in the life of Job. Here was a man who lost everything in a compressed and devastating sequence of events that would have annihilated the faith of people. His wealth, his children, his health, his social standing, the support of his wife, and eventually, the well-meaning but profoundly unhelpful counsel of his friends, who decided that his suffering must be the result of hidden sin. Job did not have a theology sophisticated enough to explain what was happening to him. He did not have access to the framing that you are receiving in this message. He simply held on, not without complaint, not without anguish, not without the kind of raw, unfiltered conversation with God that made his friends deeply uncomfortable. But he held on. He refused to curse God and die as his wife suggested. He refused to confess to sins he had not committed, as his friends insisted. He maintained his integrity in the middle of a storm that had no visible bottom. And in chapter 42 of the book of Job, when the restoration comes, it is staggering in its completeness. The Lord restored the fortunes of Job when he had prayed for his friends, and the Lord gave Job twice as much as he had before. Twice. Not a sympathetic partial restoration, not just enough to get by, twice what was taken. And the friends and family who had been absent during the suffering showed up to celebrate during the restoration and brought gifts. The very relationships that went quiet during the dark season were restored when the light returned. But here is the detail in Job's restoration that most people miss, the one that carries the deepest significance for where you are right now. Job's restoration did not come at the moment he stopped struggling. It did not come when he finally achieved a state of perfect peace and untroubled faith. It came after he prayed for his friends, after he chose to extend to the very people who had failed him the same kind of intercession and grace that he himself had needed. The breakthrough of his restoration was released through an act of covenant love toward people who had not earned it. And that is not incidental. That is the precise mechanism by which heaven releases restoration into broken human lives. Not the achievement of perfect theology, not the performance of flawless faith, but the extension of love in the direction it is least deserved, which mirrors exactly what God did for every one of us in the sacrifice of Jesus. Your broken seasons are not the final word over your life. They are not the permanent verdict. They are not the ceiling of what your story will ever be. They are the chapters that God is in the process of redeeming, the material he is holding in his hands with the full intention of creating from it something that will make even the people who witnessed your worst seasons stand in wonder at what he has done. The covenant of restoration is not a reward for the ones who handled their pain perfectly. It is a promise for the ones who refuse to let go of God in the middle of it. And you are still holding on, which means the restoration is not just possible. Under the terms of the covenant that God himself has sealed over your life, it is inevitable. Every scar you carry is becoming a story. Every wound is becoming a witness. Every year that felt consumed is being reclaimed by a God who wastes nothing and abandons no one who has placed their life in his hands. The broken place is not your ending. It is the very ground on which God is building your most glorious chapter yet. You were never meant to carry this alone. That sentence may sound simple on the surface, but underneath it lives one of the most profound and most frequently violated truths in the entire body of teaching that Jesus left behind for those who would follow him. The culture of individualism that surrounds you, the world that celebrates the self-made person, the lone achiever, the one who figured it out without needing anyone else. That culture is not just philosophically incompatible with the way of Jesus. It is structurally incompatible with the kind of strength and steadfastness that this message has been building toward from the very first word. Look at how Jesus moved through the world. He did not arrive alone. He did not minister alone. He did not even send people out alone. In Luke chapter 10, verse 1, when he appointed 72 others and sent them ahead of him into every town and place he was about to visit, he sent them two by two, not one by one, not each person to their own territory with their own strategy and their own spiritual resources. 2 by 2. There was the divine intentionality in that number. He was encoding into the very structure of the mission a principle that the church has never stopped needing to hear. You are stronger together than you are alone. Not marginally stronger, categorically stronger. The kind of strength that makes darkness genuinely uncomfortable rather than merely inconvenienced. In Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verses 9 through 12, Solomon articulates this truth with a clarity that has never been improved upon. Two are better than one, because they have a good reward for their toil. For if they fall, one will lift up his fellow. But woe to him who is alone when he falls, and has not another to lift him up. And though a man might prevail against one who is alone, two will withstand him. A threefold cord is not quickly broken. Notice that Solomon is not talking about the pleasant social benefits of friendship here. He is talking about survival. He is talking about what happens when you fall, when you are overwhelmed, when the opposition proves stronger than your individual capacity to withstand it. In those moments, the presence of another person who is genuinely in covenant with you is not a comfort. It is a lifeline. You have been in seasons where you fell, and there was no one there to lift you up, or where you were surrounded by people, but none of them were actually present in the way that you needed them to be. You know the particular loneliness of being in a crowd and feeling completely unseen, of having relationships that function on a surface level but never go deep enough to touch the real thing, the actual weight you are carrying, the genuine questions you are wrestling with, the specific fear that visits you at 3 in the morning when everyone else is asleep. That loneliness is real, and it is one of the most disorienting forms of pain that exists, because it lives in the space between the visible evidence of connection and the felt reality of isolation. But here is what Jesus was addressing when he structured his ministry around community, when he built a team of 12 who lived and traveled and ate and argued and prayed and wept and celebrated together for 3 years before he sent them out to change the world. He was not just creating an efficient ministry structure. He was modeling the ecosystem in which human strength, specifically the strength of people who carry divine assignments, actually thrives, not in isolation, not in the performance of solo spirituality, where you handle everything privately between yourself and God and never let anyone close enough to see the real condition of your life, but in the vulnerable, sometimes uncomfortable, frequently inconvenient reality of genuine community, where people know your name and your history and your struggles and still choose to show up. The strength that comes through sacred community is a specific kind of strength that personal devotion alone cannot produce. When another person who has walked through their own fire sits with you in yours and tells you that they made it through, something happens in the deepest part of you that no sermon and no personal quiet time can replicate. Faith becomes tangible. The abstract promise that God brings people through becomes a breathing, visible, present evidence that is sitting right across from you. And that evidence does something to your capacity to keep going that is genuinely miraculous in its effect, even though it arrives through the entirely ordinary means of one human being choosing to be present with another. The early church understood this instinctively. Acts chapter 2 verse 42 tells us that they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship, to the breaking of bread and to prayer. 4 things: teaching, fellowship, communion, and prayer. Not one of those 4 things is a solitary activity. Every single one of them is designed to happen in the presence of other people, in the context of shared life and shared faith and shared vulnerability and shared joy. The early believers did not attend each other. They belonged to each other. And the result of that belonging was a community that turned the ancient world upside down, not primarily through the brilliance of its arguments, but through the undeniable reality of its love. You need people around you who are genuinely for you, not just acquaintances who wish you well in a general sense, not just fellow believers who will pray briefly for you when you mention a need and then move on. People who are in it with you. People who will sit in the hard conversation without rushing to fix you. People who celebrate your victories without jealousy, and mourn your losses without judgment. People who carry the same fire that you carry and who will not let you put it down. The weight of it becomes overwhelming. And equally, you need to be that person for someone else. Because the divine secret of remaining steadfast that Jesus wove into the structure of community is not just about what you receive. It is about what flows through you when you choose to show up for someone else in the middle of your own hard season. There is a supernatural strengthening that happens when you take the limited resources you have in a difficult moment and extend them in the direction of another person who needs them. It mirrors precisely what God does for you. And in that mirroring, something of His strength gets released into your own life in return. Before we step into the next part of this message, take a moment and type these words in the comments right now. I am not alone. Just those 3 words. Let it be your declaration that you are receiving the truth of this section, that you are choosing to believe that God has placed and is placing around your life the community of people that your calling requires, and that you are not designed to walk this road in isolation, no matter how long that isolation has lasted. And from the heart of this ministry, we want to say something simple and sincere. If these messages have become part of your community, if this space has been a place where you have felt seen and spoken to and strengthened, then we are genuinely grateful for that. If you feel led to support the continuation of this work, the link is in the description below. Every contribution sustains the ability of this ministry to reach the next person who needs a word exactly like the one you received today. It is completely voluntary and comes with our deepest gratitude, whether you give or not. Share this message with someone in your community today. Not just anyone, but the specific person who came to your mind while you were listening. Like this video as a declaration of agreement. Subscribe if you have not yet, because the community being built in this space is one that God is using to strengthen His chosen ones all over the world. You were built for community, and the strength that flows through genuine connection with other believers is part of the divine secret that will carry you through everything still ahead. There is a weapon in your possession right now that is more powerful than anything the enemy has ever deployed against you. It is not a weapon that requires physical strength to wield, or financial resources to acquire, or years of theological training to master. It is available to you in this exact moment, in this exact condition, regardless of how depleted you feel, or how long the battle has been running, or how distant victory may appear from where you are currently standing. That weapon is your voice. Specifically, it is the declarations you make with your voice over your own life, the words you choose to speak into the atmosphere of your own story, the sentences you construct about who you are and what is possible and what God is doing and where you are headed. Your confession, in the deepest biblical sense of that word, is not decoration. It is not spiritual performance or motivational self-talk dressed in religious language. It is one of the primary mechanisms through which heaven releases its reality into the circumstances of your earthly life. Jesus demonstrated this truth not occasionally but constantly, and with a precision and a boldness that should permanently recalibrate the way you think about the words that come out of your mouth on an ordinary Tuesday morning, when nothing particularly spiritual is happening, and you are simply moving through the routine of your day. In Matthew chapter 17, verse 20, He tells His disciples that if they have faith even as small as a mustard seed, they will say to this mountain, "Move from here to there," and it will move. Not pray about the mountain, not ask God to consider moving the mountain on their behalf. Say to the mountain, direct address, spoken word. verbal declaration aimed precisely at the obstacle, with the expectation that the words themselves, carrying the authority of heaven behind them, will produce a result in the physical world that no amount of silent wishing or anxious hoping could ever achieve. This is not a peripheral teaching in the ministry of Jesus. It is central to how he operated from the very beginning of his public life. When he was in the wilderness for 40 days, and the enemy came to him with his most sophisticated temptations, Jesus did not respond with thoughts. He responded with words. Specifically, he responded with the spoken word of Scripture, with the declared truth of what was written, with the vocal assertion of a reality that was more permanent and more authoritative than anything the enemy was offering him. It is written, 3 words, spoken out loud, and in that speaking, the temptation was dismantled and the enemy was forced to retreat. There is a reason that the enemy works so hard to fill your inner world with a specific kind of language, with sentences that begin with the words, I cannot, with declarations that end with the conclusion, I am not enough, with narratives that describe your future in terms of what has already failed rather than what God has already promised. He understands, with a clarity that many believers never fully develop, that the words a person consistently speaks over their own life become the architecture of the reality they inhabit, that what you say about yourself shapes what you believe about yourself, and what you believe about yourself determines the quality and the direction of every decision you make, every risk you take or refuse to take, every open door you walk through or stand in front of, paralyzed by the voice that has been telling you that you are not the kind of person that things like that happen to. The enemy is not primarily a creator. He is a counterfeiter. He takes something real and true and powerful that God designed for your flourishing and produces a corrupted version of it designed for your destruction. God designed the human voice to carry divine authority and to release faith-filled declarations that align earth with heaven. The enemy took that same mechanism and has been using it to turn your own mouth into an instrument of limitation and defeat. Every time you say, I always fail at this, every time you say nothing ever works out for me, every time you say I am too far gone or too broken or too behind or too damaged for God to use, you are not being honest about your circumstances. You are being dishonest about your God. You are allowing the conditions of a temporary season to overwrite the declarations of an eternal covenant. Proverbs chapter 18, verse 21 says that death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruits. Not some life and some death in a moderate, balanced, evenly distributed way. Death and life. The full spectrum. The tongue carries both capacities simultaneously, and which one it releases is determined by what you choose to speak. This is not a suggestion about the benefits of positive thinking. This is a spiritual law, written into the fabric of creation by a God who himself spoke the world into existence, and then made you in his image with the capacity to speak in a way that carries creative authority. Think about what Jesus spoke in the most extreme circumstances of his ministry. When he stood at the tomb of Lazarus 4 days after his friend had died, in the presence of grieving family members and a watching crowd, and the physical reality of decay, he did not whisper a private prayer and hope for the best. He lifted his voice and spoke directly to the dead man inside the sealed tomb. Lazarus, come out. And the dead man walked out, not because the circumstances were favorable, not because the evidence suggested resurrection was a reasonable expectation, but because a voice carrying divine authority spoke a word that was more real than the reality that was visible, and the visible reality had no choice but to rearrange itself in response. You have been looking at the tomb in your life and allowing the reality of what is sealed inside it to determine what you say about your future. The dead dream, the broken relationship, the financial situation that has not moved in longer than you want to admit. The health report that arrived with language you did not want to hear. The opportunity that closed before you could fully step through it. You have been speaking the language of the sealed tomb rather than the language of the God who stands outside every sealed tomb in your life with the absolute authority to call what is dead back into living. What you speak in the dark is not less powerful than what you speak in the light. What you declare when no one is listening is not less significant than what you confess in a room full of witnesses. In fact, it may be more significant, because the private declarations, the ones you make when it is just you and God and the weight of your current reality, those are the ones that reveal what you actually believe at the deepest level. And what you actually believe at the deepest level is what shapes the trajectory of your life with far more precision than any external circumstance ever could. So begin to speak differently, not because your circumstances have changed yet, but because your God has not changed ever. Begin to declare what He has said rather than what you have seen. Begin to confess the covenant promises over your life with the same specificity and the same boldness and the same confident expectation that Jesus demonstrated when He spoke to storms and mountains and death itself and expected them to respond. Declare that you are healed by the stripes of Jesus, as written in 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 24. Declare that no weapon formed against you shall prosper, as written in Isaiah chapter 54, verse 17. Declare that you can do all things through Christ, who strengthens you, as written in Philippians chapter 4, verse 13. Declare that God causes all things to work together for good for those who love Him, as written in Romans chapter 8, verse 28. Speak these things not once but daily, not quietly but boldly, not as a ritual, but as a genuine faith-filled agreement with the word of a God whose promises do not return to Him empty. Your tongue has been given to you as an instrument of divine alignment. The question is not whether it is powerful enough to make a difference in your life. The question is whether you will begin using it in agreement with heaven rather than in agreement with the enemy, who has been studying your speech patterns for years and has been very pleased with what he has heard. Begin today. Begin now. Open your mouth and let the first thing that comes out be a declaration of what God says about you, rather than a description of what circumstances have produced around you. Because the confession that rewrites your reality is not the one you will make someday when things get better. It is the one you make right now, in the middle of everything that has not yet changed, as an act of faith in the God who is already moving on your behalf. You have traveled a long way to reach this moment, not just through the sections of this message, but through the seasons of your actual life that brought you to the place where a word like this one could find you and land in the places where it needed to land. You did not arrive here by accident. You were led here. And everything that has been spoken over you in this message, from the letter that heaven wrote specifically for you, to the root system that Jesus planted, to the pressure that was never punishment but always promotion, to the enemy who confirmed your assignment by fighting it so hard, to the blueprint hidden in the Beatitudes, to the stillness that is warfare, to the covenant of restoration that covers every broken season, to the community that carries you when carrying becomes too heavy, to the declaration that rewrites reality. All of it has been building toward this final word. The word that heaven saved for last, because it is the one that must go with you when you close this message and step back into the ordinary and extraordinary demands of your actual life. You are standing at a threshold, not a metaphorical one, a real one. A moment in the timeline of your life where something is shifting at a level that your natural eyes may not yet be able to fully perceive, but that your spirit has already been registering throughout this entire message. That stirring you have been feeling, that quiet but persistent sense that something is different now, that something has moved inside of you that cannot be moved back. That is not emotional response to well-constructed sentences. That is the Holy Spirit marking a moment of transition in your life. And what you do with that marking in the days immediately following this message will determine how much of what was deposited in you today is actually carried forward into the seasons ahead. Jesus did not end the Sermon on the Mount with inspiration alone. He ended it with a call to build. In Matthew chapter 7, verses 24 through 27, he tells the story of two builders. One who hears his words and puts them into practice, who is like a wise man who built his house on the rock, and one who hears them and does not put them into practice, who is like a foolish man who built his house on sand. And Jesus makes clear that both houses faced the same storm. The rain fell, the streams rose, the winds blew, and beat against both structures with equal force and equal ferocity. The difference was not the intensity of the storm. The difference was the foundation. And the foundation was not determined by the quality of the hearing. It was determined by the quality of the doing. You have been hearing throughout this entire message. Now comes the building. Now comes the moment where what entered your ears and touched your spirit must find its way into the daily, practical, sometimes unglamorous work of actually constructing a life that is rooted in Jesus in the ways this message has described. The early morning stillness that you choose instead of reaching for your phone, the declaration you speak over yourself before the voices of the day have a chance to establish their narrative, the community you invest in and allow to invest in you, rather than keeping everyone at the safe distance that protects you from vulnerability, but also prevents you from being genuinely known. The covenant promises you return to when the pressure builds and the enemy whispers that you have been forgotten. These are the bricks of the unshakable house, and no one can lay them for you. The unshakable life that Jesus revealed the secret of is not a destination you arrive at one day when all your circumstances finally align. It is a daily construction project undertaken by a person who has decided that the foundation matters more than the speed of the building, that roots matter more than the immediate appearance of fruit, that the hidden hours of communion with God are more valuable than the visible hours of performing for the approval of others, that the slow, faithful, sometimes invisible work of becoming the person God designed you to be is the most important work you will ever do, more important than any achievement, any platform, any recognition that the world might offer. And here is what heaven wants you to know about the specific season you are stepping into on the other side of this message. The strongest chapter of your life is not behind you. It has not already happened while you were too distracted or too young or too unprepared to fully receive it. The strongest chapter is ahead, the most fruitful season, the deepest experience of God's faithfulness, the most significant expression of the calling that has been on your life since before you were born. Those things are not in your rearview mirror. They are on the horizon that you are moving toward with every step you take in the direction of the unshakable life that Jesus died to give you. You are not too late. You have not missed it. The years that felt consumed are being restored. The seeds that were planted in seasons of tears are about to produce a harvest in a season of joy. The roots that went deep during the winter are about to sustain a spring of fruitfulness that will exceed what you dared to ask for in your most hopeful moments. God is not done with your story. He is not even close to done. And the best evidence of that is the fact that He brought you to this message today, that He arranged this specific appointment between His Word and your spirit at this specific moment in your life. Because He needed you to be reminded of what you carry and who you are and what is coming. Now, before this message closes, we want to speak to you from the most honest place we know. This channel exists entirely as an act of ministry. There are no advertisements running here. YouTube has demonetized channel, which means every video you watch here, every message that finds you in the middle of your storm and speaks directly to where you are, is produced without any platform support or financial backing from the system that delivers it to you. We make these videos because we believe with everything in us that words like the ones in this message are changing lives, and we are not willing to stop creating them simply because the economics are difficult. If this ministry has meant something to you, if these messages have been a place where you have found strength, clarity, renewed faith, or simply the reassurance that you are not alone in what you are walking through, and if you feel in your heart a genuine desire to help us continue this work, we want to invite you to consider supporting this channel through the donation link in the description below and in the pinned comment. We want to be completely transparent with you. Every contribution, whatever amount you are able to give, goes directly into the ability of this ministry to keep producing content that reaches the people who need it most. People who are in their darkest seasons right now and who need a word that will not find them if we are not able to keep creating. This is entirely voluntary. There is no guilt attached to it and no pressure from us. We understand that every person listening is in a different season of life and a different season of provision. But if you are led to give, please know that what you are doing is not just supporting a YouTube channel. You are becoming part of the reason that the next chosen one, sitting alone in their storm right now, finds a light that changes the direction of everything. That is the real investment. That is the eternal fruit of what your generosity produces. If this message blessed you, share it today with someone who needs it. Like this video as a simple declaration of agreement. Subscribe to this channel so that the next message finds you before the next storm does. You are part of a community of chosen ones that God is gathering from every corner of the world for this specific moment in history. You are unshakable. You are unbreakable. You are chosen, not because you are perfect, but because the God who chose you is perfectly faithful. And He who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion until the day of Christ Jesus. That is not a feeling, that is a promise, and it has your name written on it. Step into your strongest season. It begins now.